We often assume that balance lives in the feet or in the inner ear, but in truth, much of it lives quietly in the neck. This narrow column of bone, muscle, and nerve is one of the most information-dense regions of the human body. Every small movement of the head stretches tiny receptors embedded in the neck muscles and joints, and these receptors constantly send signals to the brain about position, direction, and stability. Long before conscious thought arises, the brain is already calculating where the body is in space, using the neck as one of its primary reference points. When this system works smoothly, we feel grounded without effort, and when it doesn't, the world begins to feel unreliable. With age, the neck gradually stiffens, not because the body is failing, but because it adapts to long periods of stillness. Years of looking down, guarding against pain, or holding tension during stress slowly reduce the natural range of motion. As movement decreases, the sensory signals from the neck become quieter and less precise. The brain, which depends on accurate input to maintain balance, begins receiving incomplete information. This mismatch between expectation and reality often expresses itself as dizziness, lightheadedness, or a sense of floating, even when nothing is medically wrong in the traditional sense. What is fascinating is that dizziness in this context is not a malfunction, but a protective response. The brain senses uncertainty and responds by increasing caution. Blood flow patterns change slightly, muscles tighten reflexively, and attention narrows. The person feels unsteady not because they are fragile, but because the nervous system is trying to prevent a fall. This is why simply telling someone to be careful or try harder rarely helps. The system is already trying very hard. What it needs is clearer information, not more effort. This is where gentle neck stretching becomes profoundly important. Slow, intentional movement restores clarity to those silent receptors. When the neck is gently tilted or lengthened, blood flow through the vertebral arteries improves, delivering oxygen to balance-related regions of the brainstem. At the same time, mechanoreceptors in the muscles awaken and begin sending accurate signals again. The brain updates its internal map of the body, and within moments, the sense of spinning or drifting can soften. This change can feel almost immediate, not because the stretch is magical, but because the nervous system has been waiting for permission to recalibrate. There is also a psychological dimension that science increasingly acknowledges. Gentle neck movement communicates safety. Fast or forceful motion can trigger defensive reflexes, especially in seniors whose brains have learned caution through experience. Slow stretching, paired with calm breathing, tells the nervous system that movement is not a threat. Muscle tone decreases, vascular resistance lowers, and sensory integration improves. The body shifts out of alert mode and into a state where balance can be restored naturally. The wisdom of Japan's oldest doctors lies in their understanding that aging is not a battle to be fought, but a relationship to be maintained. They observed that elders who preserved small, daily movements of the neck retained clearer balance and sharper awareness. These doctors did not separate physical structure from perception or emotion. They recognized that the neck is where posture, attention, and circulation meet. When this area is cared for gently, the effects ripple outward, influencing how confidently a person stands, walks, and even thinks. In this way, dizziness becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. It invites a slower pace, a softer approach, and a return to listening. The neck does not demand strength. It asks for respect. When seniors learn to move it again with patience, the brain receives a familiar language it has not heard in years, and balance begins to feel less like something to control and more like something that quietly returns as the body remembers itself. When we speak about the second stretch, we are really speaking about trust between the brain and the body. Rotation of the neck is one of the first movements the nervous system becomes cautious about with age. Turning the head changes visual input, inner ear signals, and neck position all at once, and the brain must integrate these streams in perfect timing. When this coordination weakens, even slightly, the brain interprets the motion as instability. Dizziness then becomes a warning signal, not of damage, but of uncertainty. Over time, many seniors unconsciously reduce how often they rotate their head. They stop looking fully to the side, they turn their shoulders instead of their neck, and they move more slowly than necessary. This adaptation feels protective, but it has a cost. The balance system depends on regular, varied input to remain accurate. When rotation is avoided, the brain receives fewer updates, and its internal predictions drift further from reality. The result is a paradox where avoiding dizziness makes the system more sensitive to it. The gentle rotational stretch used by Japan's oldest doctors is not designed to push limits, but to reintroduce familiarity. When the head turns slowly within a comfortable range, neck proprioceptors, inner ear organs, and visual tracking systems begin to synchronize again. The semicircular canals of the inner ear respond to rotational movement, while neck sensors inform the brain about muscle length and joint angle. When these signals arrive together and without threat, the brain relearns that rotation can be safe. What makes this stretch particularly powerful is its effect on anticipation. Dizziness often arises not at the end of a movement, but before it, when the brain predicts instability. Slow rotation disrupts this cycle. By moving just short of discomfort and pausing briefly, the nervous system updates its prediction model. Each successful, calm rotation becomes evidence that the world does not spin when the body moves. Over time, this evidence accumulates, and the fear response fades. Blood flow also plays a subtle role here. Gentle rotation reduces chronic muscular compression around the cervical spine, allowing smoother circulation to the vestibular nuclei in the brainstem. These nuclei act as a central hub for balance processing. When they receive consistent oxygen and glucose delivery, signal noise decreases and reflexes become more precise. The sensation of dizziness often lessens not because movement has stopped, but because circulation has normalized. There is an emotional layer that cannot be separated from the physiology. Rotation requires willingness to face what is behind us, literally and figuratively. Many elders hold tension in the neck as a physical reflection of vigilance developed over a lifetime. Slow rotational stretching invites release without forcing it. As the muscles soften, breathing deepens, and the parasympathetic nervous system becomes more active. The body exits a defensive posture and enters a state where learning and adaptation are possible. Japan's oldest doctors understood that healing the balance system is not about eliminating motion, but about restoring confidence in motion. They observed that elders who practiced gentle rotation daily moved through the world with more ease and less hesitation. Their steps became steadier, their gaze more fluid, and their posture less guarded. The neck, once rigid with caution, became a flexible communicator between the senses. In this way, the second stretch does more than reduce dizziness. It rebuilds a relationship that time and fear have slowly strained. Each calm rotation tells the brain that the present moment is safe, that movement does not equal danger, and that balance is not something to be held tightly, but something that emerges naturally when the body is allowed to explore its space again. The third idea emerges when we stop looking for instant fixes and start observing how the body truly adapts. Aging does not erase the body's ability to change, it only changes the speed and the language through which change occurs. The nervous system in seniors remains plastic, capable of learning and relearning balance, but it responds poorly to urgency. What Japan's oldest doctors recognized is that the body listens best when it is not rushed. Consistent, gentle neck movement works not because it is dramatic, but because it is repeated with respect. Every time a senior performs a small, careful stretch, a quiet neurological event takes place. Neural pathways responsible for posture, orientation, and equilibrium are slightly reinforced. These pathways do not strengthen through force, but through repetition without fear. The brain measures patterns over time, not isolated efforts. When the same safe movement is practiced daily, the nervous system begins to treat it as normal again. Balance improves not in sudden leaps, but in subtle recalibrations that accumulate beneath awareness. There is a biological reason consistency matters so deeply. Muscle tissue, connective fascia, and joint capsules all adapt slowly with age. Abrupt or aggressive stretching triggers protective tightening, which reinforces stiffness rather than reducing it. Gentle daily motion, however, gradually restores elasticity. Blood vessels become more responsive, nerve conduction becomes clearer, and the background tension that distorts sensory input begins to fade. What feels like patience is actually precision at the cellular level. The brain mirrors this process. When seniors approach movement with curiosity instead of pressure, the brain shifts out of threat detection and into learning mode. This shift changes how balance information is processed. Signals from the neck, eyes, and inner ear are integrated more smoothly when the brain is calm. Over time, this creates a stable baseline, reducing the likelihood of sudden dizziness episodes. The improvement often feels subtle day to day, but noticeable when looking back weeks later. Consistency also carries emotional weight. Many elders have learned to associate physical discomfort with decline, and this belief alone can amplify symptoms. Daily, manageable movement interrupts the narrative. Each completed stretch becomes quiet evidence that the body is still capable of cooperation. Confidence returns not through motivational speeches, but through lived experience. The body begins to feel less like something that might fail at any moment, and more like a partner that responds when treated kindly. Japan's oldest doctors often emphasized routine over intensity because routine creates trust. The nervous system thrives on predictability. When gentle neck movements occur at the same time each day, the brain anticipates them without alarm. Muscles relax sooner, breathing steadies more quickly, and balance responses become smoother. This predictability reduces the background stress that contributes to dizziness, especially in environments where seniors already feel uncertain. There is also a philosophical insight hidden here. Health in later life is not about reclaiming youth, but about refining awareness. Slow, consistent practice teaches attentiveness. Seniors begin to notice subtle sensations, early signs of tension, and the difference between effort and strain. This awareness allows adjustments before discomfort escalates. Dizziness often loses its power when it is noticed early and met with gentle correction rather than fear. In this way, the third lesson is not really about stretching at all. It is about rebuilding a rhythm between intention and biology. The body responds when it is approached regularly, calmly, and without demand. What looks simple from the outside is actually a long conversation between nerves, vessels, muscles, and memory. Over time, that conversation becomes clearer, steadier, and more forgiving, allowing balance to return not as a sudden victory, but as a quiet, reliable presence that grows stronger each day. The fourth idea lives at the intersection of physiology and emotion, where the body's signals are shaped not only by muscles and nerves, but by meaning. Dizziness often feels frightening because it threatens our sense of control, and the human nervous system is deeply sensitive to perceived loss of control. When balance wavers, the brain does not simply register a mechanical error, it interprets the moment through memory, expectation, and emotion. This is why two people with similar physical stiffness can experience dizziness very differently. One feels mild discomfort, the other feels alarm. The difference lies in how safe the body feels while processing sensation. As people age, the nervous system tends to become more vigilant. Years of falls avoided, injuries survived, and uncertainties faced quietly train the brain to prioritize caution. This vigilance shows up physically as tension, especially in the neck and shoulders. Muscles remain partially contracted even at rest, compressing blood vessels and dulling sensory feedback. The brain then receives distorted information and responds with even more caution. A loop forms, not because the body is broken, but because it is trying to protect itself with outdated strategies. Gentle neck stretching interrupts this loop by sending a powerful message of safety. Slow movement, paired with relaxed breathing, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, repair, and clarity. Heart rate softens, muscle tone decreases, and sensory signals become cleaner. The brain, sensing reduced threat, widens its focus. Balance improves not because a single structure has been fixed, but because the entire system has shifted from defense to cooperation. This is why forceful correction often fails. Aggressive movement reinforces the idea that something is wrong and must be fought. The body responds by tightening further. Compassionate movement, on the other hand, communicates patience. It tells the nervous system there is no emergency. Over time, this changes how sensations are interpreted. Mild instability no longer triggers panic, and the brain becomes more willing to explore movement again. Dizziness loses its emotional charge, which often reduces its physical intensity as well. The oldest doctors in Japan understood that healing requires emotional permission. They watched elders who moved gently regain confidence faster than those who pushed themselves. These doctors paid close attention to posture, facial expression, and breath, knowing that these reveal how safe a person feels inside their body. When the neck softened, the eyes softened, and when the eyes softened, balance followed. This was not mysticism, but careful observation of how the nervous system behaves when fear subsides. There is also a deeper human truth here. Aging can create a subtle sense of mistrust toward the body. Sensations that were once ignored now demand attention, and unfamiliar feelings are often interpreted as decline. Gentle daily movement rebuilds trust one moment at a time. Each stretch completed without discomfort becomes evidence that the body is still reliable. This trust reduces internal noise, allowing sensory information to be processed more accurately. Balance is restored not only through mechanics, but through reassurance. Compassion toward the body changes behavior in ways that science increasingly supports. People who move with kindness tend to breathe more deeply, maintain better posture, and notice early signs of tension before they escalate. These small differences accumulate. Blood flow improves, nerve signaling stabilizes, and the background stress that fuels dizziness slowly diminishes. The body responds to how it is treated, and when it is treated as fragile, it becomes guarded, but when it is treated as capable, it begins to act that way again. In this light, neck stretching becomes a form of dialogue rather than exercise. It is a way of asking the body how it feels today and responding accordingly. This dialogue restores dignity to movement and reframes aging as a process of refinement rather than loss. The nervous system, once trapped in vigilance, begins to rediscover ease, and balance returns not as something forced into place, but as something allowed to emerge when the body finally feels safe enough to let go. The fifth insight is perhaps the most subtle, yet the most enduring, because it reframes what it means to age well. The oldest doctors in Japan did not view the body as a collection of failing parts, but as a system that adapts continuously to how it is used and understood. They observed that balance, clarity, and steadiness are not preserved by strength alone, but by harmony between systems that were never meant to work in isolation. The neck, the eyes, the inner ear, breathing, posture, and attention are all participants in the same conversation, and dizziness often appears when that conversation becomes fragmented. Modern life encourages fragmentation. We treat symptoms separately, we isolate body parts, and we expect single solutions to solve complex experiences. Yet the body does not operate this way. When the neck stiffens, vision compensates. When vision struggles, the inner ear works harder. When the inner ear becomes overwhelmed, the nervous system tightens posture and alters breathing. What is felt as dizziness is often the cumulative strain of systems trying to compensate for one another without coordination. Gentle neck stretches work not because they target one structure, but because they restore cooperation across many. This cooperation depends heavily on rhythm. The body thrives on slow, predictable patterns. Breath has a rhythm, walking has a rhythm, even thought has a rhythm. Aging often disrupts these rhythms through stress, loss, or prolonged inactivity. Neck stiffness is both a cause and a consequence of this disruption. When gentle movement is reintroduced regularly, it acts like a metronome for the nervous system. Signals begin to arrive on time again. Muscles respond when expected. Balance reflexes fire with less delay. The body feels less surprised by itself. There is also an attentional component that cannot be ignored. Seniors who practice these movements mindfully often report feeling more present in their bodies. This presence sharpens sensory accuracy. The brain processes balance information more efficiently when attention is grounded rather than scattered. Dizziness thrives in distraction, when signals are missed or misinterpreted. Calm, attentive movement reduces this noise. The body does not need to shout to be heard when it is being listened to. The oldest doctors emphasized simplicity for a reason. Complex routines overwhelm the nervous system and reinforce the idea that health is difficult to maintain. 2 simple neck stretches, practiced gently, communicate the opposite message. They suggest that the body is resilient, that small actions matter, and that improvement does not require struggle. This belief alone changes outcomes. When people expect their bodies to respond, they move differently, breathe differently, and recover more quickly. There is quiet dignity in this approach. It honors the reality of aging without surrendering to it. It accepts limitations while expanding possibility. Balance is no longer something to be conquered, but something to be cultivated. Dizziness becomes less of an enemy and more of a signal, pointing toward areas that need patience rather than pressure. This shift in perspective reduces fear, and fear is one of the strongest amplifiers of physical symptoms. Over time, these gentle practices reshape identity. Seniors stop seeing themselves as unstable or fragile and begin to see themselves as adaptable. This change influences how they stand, how they walk, and how they engage with the world. Confidence grows not from absence of symptoms, but from understanding them. The body feels less mysterious and less threatening. Movement becomes exploratory rather than defensive. What emerges from this fifth lesson is a broader understanding of health as relationship. The body responds to how it is treated, how it is spoken to, and how it is expected to behave. Gentle neck stretching is a daily reminder that care does not have to be intense to be effective, and that clarity often returns when systems are allowed to reconnect at their own pace. Balance, in the deepest sense, is not just physical stability, but an ongoing alignment between attention, movement, and trust that continues to evolve as long as the body is met with respect. If you found these insights helpful and want to continue learning practical, science-backed strategies to stay healthy, strong, and vibrant as you age, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends and family who could benefit, and subscribe to our channel for daily senior wellness tips, nutrition guidance, and simple lifestyle hacks designed to enhance longevity and quality of life. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video that can help you live healthier, happier, and more empowered every day.